That's the moment the Party for Socialism and Liberation says was inaudible in the critical incident video showing the police shooting that killed Adam Sykes.
Today we tell Mike Brown and the ruling class that we won't be divided. We've seen these tricks before. Immigrants are not dangerous. Capitalism is.
Welcome to another episode of Naptown People's Radio, a weekly podcast brought to you by the Indianapolis branch of the Party for Socialism and Liberation. I'm your host, Dani Abdullah, and I'm here with my comrade and co-host,
Derek Ford.
We're here to guide you through the pressing issues facing Indianapolis from the perspective of our people, not our oppressors. And as organizers involved in these issues, we're not just talking about the news, we're making it happen. Or actually, as somebody said yesterday before the library board meeting, they were like, real news by real people. And I was like, ooh, I was like, that's cute. I like that. So I don't know. We might switch it up. Probably not, because I like how we word it now. But real news by real people. So today we have an episode of Dispatches from Behind the Wire with Comrade Shaka A. And we rap with Shaka about his case, what led up to his incarceration, plans to free him before his 60th birthday in August, and ways that listeners can get involved in freeing Shaka. But y'all know how this goes. So before we get into it with Shaka, let's get into the Naptown Breakdown. So what's going on in Naptown, Derek?
Well, a couple of things. One, I'm delighted to inform our listeners that we have officially won our court case, the Shaka A. Shakur campaign.
Yes.
The Shaka Shakur Freedom Campaign has won our civil case against Post-Conviction Relief Associates, which has been represented variously by Brandon Harper and I guess his mom, Robin Harper. So they
learned it from.
Yeah. So or he's like just their wayward son. I don't know. But yes, we were granted a judgment and deferral, $10,000, which is the maximum you can impose in small claims court, plus court costs, which is about $155. They have 30 days to appeal. I doubt they will because they have no leg to stand on. And then it is all due in one lump sum. And if we don't get it in one lump sum, then there are various avenues that we can pursue to do that. And I will not be doing that, thank God. I've done my piece, so it's kind of dumped on my lap. Nick from IDOC Watch is going to be taking that over. So we will recoup that money, and that's a big win for us. And also for me, because I don't have to get up at 7 in the morning to make it to the 9:30.
It's been horrible for you.
Well, in the summer, come on. But yeah, no, it was horrible for me. And thank you for the sympathy, because I need it. And speaking of fraud, Mirror Indy released the last of their joint investigation with Indy Star into Joe Hogsett's administration. Now, Joe Hogsett, as you know, is a grifter, drunk, and although I did talk to him at the Juneteenth thing about Shaka's case, I think he was feeling it because he was probably imbibing some spiked lemonade. But regardless, yeah. So just like the openness with which he like touted the fact that we got to repay our donors with contracts is quite unbelievable. I mean, he literally called somebody up to his office and was like, hey, this guy gave, X amount of dollars to our campaign. Where's his contract? And his staff was like shocked at that. Like, usually you don't do that.
Usually like hide it a little better than that.
Yeah. So like staffers are saying they were repeatedly pressured by senior admin officials to volunteer for Hogsett's campaign in ways they now are saying were unethical. And so, if the donors had expectations, Hogsett said, to Indy Star, then, they understand they're dealing with a former federal prosecutor. So that ain't gonna fly, right? And that was this whole thing he ran in 2015 about no more corruption and government databases, transparency. But the exact opposite has transpired since he took office. And it's just shameless, really, is the word they use to it. So, like, even this is a quote from the Mirror Indy Star Report. Even a seafood boil-themed going-away party for the mayor's former special counsel served as a fundraising opportunity. Responding to an email invitation to the 2021 party, Hogsett asked the guests, which included city staffers and donors representing some of the city's most powerful law firms, to show up with campaign cash, according to emails that they've obtained. So again, we see that Hogsett is in office to serve his donors, not the people. So I do not think he probably remembered meeting me or a word of what I said, but I had to say it anyway, you know? And, you know, speaking of just shameless donors and self-interested people.
Yeah. So we were at the library board meeting last night. And just a reminder, you know, like capitalism is literally like taking, like the people, the workers are making profits, and like the billionaires and the millionaires get to like reap the benefits of that, right? I mean, that's capitalism, right? And one of the places, before joining the party, I would never think about the library being this institution that is like infused with like this capitalistic rhetoric, but like it is. So last night was a library board meeting. We talked about this briefly on here, and then it's been hopefully all over social media if you're paying attention. But like the Library Board of Trustees met to decide if they were going to give the CEO, which, why does the library have a CEO? But the CEO of the library, Greg Hill, a 30% raise, which is, it's a little over $60,000. It's about like 62 something K. And so a lot of people came out, including, and I think, honestly, like most importantly, the library workers came out, asked me, 3390 came out, and Michael Torres, shout out to Michael Torres always, came out and spoke on behalf of library union members. A couple of library union members spoke up and talked about how like this 3% raise that the library workers are supposed to be getting is not like it adds up to like literal pennies. Whereas Greg Hill, who does nothing, shows up for photo ops, does not actually lead the library at all, is going to get a $60,000 raise, approximately $60,000. And Biederman, who is the Library Board of Trustees president, when asked like why in the world Greg Hill would need over $60,000, talked about like we need to be competitive and we need to keep up with other library CEOs, and also talked about like, you know, essentially alluded to that Greg Hill said that he would not stay the CEO if he did not get this much money. Because
he's such a great CEO that people all across the country are just begging for him.
Right. Yeah. Which there was a gentleman last night who said, essentially was like, yeah, he doesn't want to stay, then bye. You know, like, because I don't know, man. Like I absolutely understand like wanting to get more money and like wanting to keep it with the cost of living. I totally get that. But like Greg Hill makes over $200,000 a year. $60,000 is more money than most librarians make in a year. And like, that's just the increase that they're apparently going to give him because they voted yes. Well, Dr. Murtada did not vote yes. Shout out to Dr. Murtada. She was the only one who has a brain apparently on the board of trustees. Cause she's the only one who did not agree with, him getting a pay increase. But the rest of the board of trustees thanked us for coming out and speaking, and then proceeded to give him a raise. Some of the library workers spoke about like the like sexual harassment they face. They talked about like the stalking that they face, the berating that they face, not to mention just the actual job of like creating programming. A lot of libraries are, not all libraries obviously, but a lot are in very disenfranchised areas and neighborhoods, right? Like people are going to the library maybe because like they're doing a homework assignment with classmates, but sometimes they're going because they can't afford the like 7 books that they would really like to read. And so they go to the library. The library also, my library, Fort Bend, has, which I learned about this last night because Shelby Peak, shout out to Shelby Peak. She's a branch manager for Fort Bend Library. She's dope. But they do these like autism like meetups, and it's like people who are on the spectrum get to meet and get to talk to each other, and it doesn't have to be like in a neurotypical way. You know, they encourage you to like meet people and do it the way that makes the most sense for you, right? Like that was because of library workers, right? Greg Hill did not come up with that idea. Greg Hill is not executing that idea. Greg Hill is not shelving books. If Greg Hill doesn't show up to work, I would not know. No one would notice if Greg Hill didn't show up.
Other than like maybe it's a little bit lighter in the air.
Yeah, maybe. Maybe it's a little, maybe. He didn't even show up to Pride this year, which that was a photo opportunity. So I'm actually surprised he didn't show up to Pride this year. But like, this dude does nothing for the people and continues to reap the benefits of it. I don't know anything that Greg Hill has actually done for the library, whereas Nichelle Hayes like has created programming for the library that the library still uses, right? Like they still use to this day. Greg Hill has created nothing for Indianapolis public libraries, and he just got over $60,000 added to his salary. So people showed up. And
it was inspiring. It was a great turnout.
It was a great turnout.
A short notice, you know?
Yeah, it was super short notice because we found out about it not that long ago, and we got a reel out Sunday. We posted a graphic like maybe Friday, and people like showed up in droves, and it truly shows like how much the people care about library workers and also like how much work that the library workers are doing. Because like if they weren't doing a good job, if they weren't a huge asset to our communities, the people wouldn't show up. Like no one would care. But like the people showed up for the librarians showed up for themselves, which is everything. Because where would we be without librarians?
And you know, it's been a while since we have intervened. I mean, basically the last time I think I was at a Board of Trustees meeting was when they anointed Gregory Hill behind closed doors. They prevented us from entering with cops with guns. We can put some of those pictures in the show notes. They tried to arrest Jesse Brown, who was running for city county council, but Doctors Payne and Murtada and myself and Stephen, protected him. But, at one point, the former board president, Hope Tribble, was bringing armed cops into library meetings. There was never a threat of violence.
No.
Library board. It's a library board meeting. Maybe you raise your voice, okay? Yeah. But you don't stick a cop with a gun on somebody who raises their voice at a library. And so, when I went up there to give my remarks, I'm looking at Ray Biederman and, I don't know how many wheels are turning in his head, but I want to say hey, none of this is personal, you're great. You're a nice guy. Last time I remember you got me a piece of pizza from the, your special Board of Trustees pizza place. Thank you. Same thing with you, Greg, who is a complete moron. And I love that second part out, but that's even not personal. It's just a fact. It's an objective fact. But I was okay, so you are, you got to keep your salary, consistent with these, whatever, other, librarians, but like, let's look at, and I think I brought up the Cleveland, not a CEO, like just a library leader, right? Let's just call them leaders because they're not CEOs. Let's not have this corporate language because then we think about it like a corporation, right? Now he made like $270,000, but that's when he renewed his 5-year contract. So he'd already worked there for 5 years and he had done like a lot of good stuff, right?
Right.
Greg, he also applied for the job. He also wanted the job. It was also part of the national search. And it was like, there was no controversy about it because people were like, yeah, he deserves it, right? And it's not astronomical and it's not so out of whack with what the workers are getting.
Mm-hmm. Well, and also like comparing like I'm not calling Greg Hill a leader.
No.
I'm not calling him that.
Barely sentient.
Yeah, misleader, I guess. I don't even say that because I think our library system, like I think our librarians are great. So he's not even necessarily misleading them; they're leading themselves. Yeah. But Greg Hill, whatever. Like comparing him to other, I'm going to use this language because that's the language that they're using. Like, but CEOs of other libraries because is weird because like those libraries are like first off are in much larger cities, much larger like library networks. The amount of like revenue that is coming into those libraries and those branches is not the same as ours. And like, that's not a knock to our library system at all. But like Indianapolis is like not even 1 million people. Like actually Indianapolis, like Fort Bend is in Lawrence, which is an excluded city, but like, we're not going to get into that on this episode. But it's still quote unquote considered Indianapolis. Right. And so like, there's not that many people in Indianapolis. And so like you're comparing his salary to the salary of someone who's in his same position in a huge city that makes more money is wild. Like that's, how are we comparing? Like, it doesn't even feel like apples and oranges, actually. Like it feels like an apple and a fucking, sorry, I'm not supposed to cuss on here. And like a turd. Like I don't understand how we're comparing these.
I love that Dani thinks a turd is a cuss word.
No, I said the F word.
Oh, okay.
That's a cuss word.
Right. I was like,
turd
what?
is not.
What?
Turd is not a cuss word. No. Yeah. But yeah, like these should not be compared.
No.
Yeah. And he hasn't even been in this position for very long.
No.
A position that he did not want.
2023, he earned like $130K. Now he's earning like $265K. That's a massive increase. He hasn't done anything in the meantime.
No.
He's basically a sitting duck. He's barely sentient. He can barely read off a PowerPoint script, right? And I'm not trying to be ableist or anything like that. I'm not being ableist. I'm just saying like, look at, you could at least prepare because if he prepared, I've seen him talk. He can prepare. He just doesn't care. He just sits there. He knew he was going to get it. He didn't have to do anything. It was like a foregone conclusion. And so, afterwards I talked to Joseph Warner, who's an Indianapolis community member. He grew up here. He's a software engineer, and he said, I've got friends and family who work at the library. My spouse is currently employed in the system. I've been a lifelong patron and lover of IndiePL, it's been a staple in my life, he said. And, so I asked him like, why did you come out here? And he said, well, to stand up with the library workers, not just the increase in the current CEO's compensation, right? Which that's been really out of step with compensation for staff. At the end of the day, we got innumerable differences in CEOs over my time. The people making the sweeping changes are the actual librarians and the workers who are making differences in people's lives, right? And so just to set the stage, I mean, there's public comment. Not a single person speaks in favor of the raise.
No.
Instead, there's about 20, 25 people, well-measured, inside voices and everything, right? Presenting coherent, different arguments about why Greg Hill should not get this raise, cannot get this raise, and where you realistically, like, obviously it's not going to fix the system, but like where else it could go. And then Biederman looks at us and it's like, I want to salute you all for your bravery. I guess I'm so intimidating that, it must have taken a lot of courage for you. So thank you for the public's input. All right, let's put this to a vote. The ayes have it. Greg, you're $60,000 richer. And that's just the base pay. That doesn't include any perks. And so as we were walking out of there, I was like, hey, just a question, who here is in favor of that? Who's here isn't in favor of that? We got to make this library board public. A public library board listens to the public, and they don't. So we need to make our library system truly, truly public, which means the public should be in charge, the workers. And we can do it. We kicked out Jackie Needus 5 years ago. We can kick out Greg Hill. But the problem is we got to get not just the same system, not just you in
absolutely.
there. We got to create a whole new system.
Absolutely.
And that work begins now. We can do it.
Yeah. Because, right, when Nichelle Hayes was the interim CEO, right, it wasn't enough just for Nichelle Hayes, who is amazing,
yes,
right, to be the CEO, because it was still the same board. It was still the same people who were backing Jackie Needus, who was in there, right? Yeah. It was still the same group of people and a group of this little posse that wanted the system to run the way that it was before. Nichelle Hayes was able to get the library workers a 5% raise when she was the interim CEO, which is unheard of.
And that was during, we're still recovering from the COVID economic crisis at the time.
Yeah. And all Greg Hill, who again does nothing, is able to offer is 3%, which the union is still negotiating. So we'll see how that goes. But the entire system has to change, because just having Dr. Murtado on that board by herself, and being in the minority when it comes to voting for things that this doesn't make sense to give this man over $60,000 extra as his base pay, right? Like you said. So we have to change that entire system, which is, again, just wild to think that this is the library, dude. If anything is supposed to be public and it's supposed to be for the people, it should be the library.
And as some of the science said, they are our most important data centers. We don't need any of this AI stuff. They are data centers. And what distinguishes them and makes them better is that there's people there who can tell you the difference between information and knowledge. Information is the fact that something happened. Knowledge is why it happened, or the various, accounts people give about why it happened, right? Yeah. And they can also point you to credible sources versus non-credible sources or questionable sources, and they will tell you that. They are nonpartisan. They're not drawing the conclusions for your research paper. They're helping you find information, valuable information and knowledge. AI doesn't do that because it can't. It's not a human, right?
Absolutely.
And so, I did ask, one of my last questions, because it can seem demoralizing, right, when you walk out of there. But I asked Joseph, I was like, well, is there anything, how you feeling about the future? And he said, well, it's great seeing folks show up. It's great seeing people come out and make their public comments. While it's a disappointing outcome, it does provide hope. It's emboldening to see other people in the community care. This issue may be done and dusted as the vote was done, but I hope other community members and myself will keep this alive. At the end of the day, the people the library serves are the people who own the library. And I think that can be our slogan, Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I do also want to say, one of our fellow member groups at the Liberation Center is the Indiana Black Librarians Network. Nikki Sullivan, the president, is on the board. But she is in a minority. It's the first time on the board, and it's her and Murtada. And so, they could have introduced something to table this until the next time, but it would have been voted down. And so that's why we really can't play this political game of appointments, because we got Stephen Lane elected, our comrade.
Yeah.
And, all that ended up doing was wasting his time. So.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's get back into it. This fight galvanized, it brought everybody together.
It did, yeah. I mean, I'm gonna be honest, I'm tired of going to library board meetings. But it is inspiring to be like, okay, look at all these people that care. And like look at all these people that came, like you said, last minute also. Like if we had more time to organize and like, okay, this is what we're doing. Because some of those before, a couple years ago, some of those library board meetings would like be packed. Because people care about the library, man. Yeah. You know, people like, contrary to popular belief, like people still go to the library. They care about the library. You know, our first data center in Indianapolis is 125 years old. That's the Martindale Brightwood Library, you know. And it's still there. It's still holding strong. And that's because of the people who work in it. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I'm gonna keep showing up.
Workers make the library run, so workers will run the library. We'll make it happen. Together with AFSCME 3395, the local library workers union. And that was the other thing. It was just great to connect with them because it's immediately like, oh, yeah, all right. You know who's on your side. You know, when you've been in a struggle with side by side, shoulder to shoulder, you know, there hasn't been a real struggle around it for a year, but it's like, boom, we're right back at it, you know, building again. And so I think that's one of the important things about the Liberation Center for me is that it provides that stability over time, right? Yeah. To build and maintain those relationships so that even when it's not a struggle, we're still, you know, connected. But even when it becomes a struggle, okay, we're right back. We're not at square one. We're right where we left off.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. All right, y'all. That's it for the Naptown Breakdown. We will be right back with Comrade Shaka Shakur.
And welcome back to Naptown People's Radio. We're honored to be joined for another segment of Dispatches from Behind the Wire with Shaka A. Shakur. And we know, you know, we've gotten a lot more listeners since we started this podcast over a year ago, and even in the last couple of months. And so while we hope you have all taken the time to look up Shaka's case, to sign the petition, the declaration, you know, show your support, love, share it, give money to the legal fund, we do want to take a moment to, you know, really just get down to the basics. So, you know, Shaka, could you tell us like where you're from and like where you're at now?
Yeah, I was born and raised in Gary, Indiana, on the west side. You know, attended West Side High School. You know, Edison, and junior high, and Ivanhoe Elementary. I'm currently being housed in Virginia, Department of Corrections, based on what they call the Interstate Corrections Compact, which is a compact between various states and Department of Corrections where they can basically send you to another state to do your time or swap you with another prisoner from another jurisdiction, or they want to remove you from their system for various reasons, whether it's so-called disciplinary or political activities or due to your influence or organizing, etc. So I was moved from Indiana, or kicked out of the Indiana Department of Corrections in 2018 and sent to Virginia, primarily because of my history of being political and organizing and influence amongst other prisoners. You know, so I've been out here, you know, 8 years.
So for listeners, for those who are like not familiar with your case, can you talk to us a little bit about like, you said that you were organizing in the past and that's why they moved you to Virginia. But what has happened between being here in Indiana and being in Virginia as far as like organizing and trying to organize to get yourself out of prison?
In 2001, my teenage son was murdered in Gary, shot in the back by another kid. You know, I just come home from doing a bid, from being a juvenile that was waiting over to adult court as a kid for attempted robbery. And, you know, just came home, attended Purdue University and working and involved in some community activities and so forth and so on. But anyway, lost my son, And they kind of set some dynamics in play that kind of led to some self-destructive activities in terms of just depression and mental health crisis, self-medicating, so forth and so on. So it kind of sets things in motion in terms of my ability to attempt to cope with that particular reality or what transpired. And it led to an incident with a local cop, Gary Cop, where I ended up shooting up a police car, basically, doing a bogus traffic stop. I mean, when my son was murdered, you know what I'm saying? There's a lot going on in terms of trying to bring his case, get his case attention, get his case solved, amongst other things. And that kind of ran afoul on the local law enforcement. You know, and I was kind of being harassed, pulled over, what have you. And really just wasn't a healthy mental space, you know. And got into that confrontation. He ended up shooting up a police car. Basically, that's what it amounts to simplify it. Nobody was seriously hurt. Officer wasn't hurt. And in actuality, during the exchange, he ran out of ammunition. You know what I'm saying? And had crawled back into the vehicle underneath the dashboard. And then I still had ammunition. I still had a full magazine. And then my intent was to kill when I could have walked right up to the car and committed a murder. Instead, I drove off, you know, to put it in a nutshell, and pulled off. I was charged later with attempt murder. The crime scene, to some extent, was staged to support that narrative of attempt murder. However, the physical evidence doesn't support it. And the man, the victim, you know, the officer himself, had left the scene with a superior officer for approximately 15 to 20 minutes, and then returned to the scene and entered into an ambulance, you know, to be transported to a hospital, even though he was not seriously injured or none of that, you know. So it's just things like that kind of undermines the narrative that the state put forth in terms of attempt murder. I took a temporary insanity plea based on my history of being incarcerated in supermax control unit prisons, tortured inside a prison. I went to prison as a 16-year-old kid for attempted robbery, served 15 years as sentence. During that time, I was in and out of control units, in and out of supermaxes, solitary confinement, 23-1 lockdown, you know, etc. I had an attorney who was pretty much ineffective on some levels. Several pleas offered when I decided to take a plea. It was not communicated to the prosecutor. There was prosecutorial misconduct. For example, a newspaper article during the middle of my trial that the prosecutor, in conjunction with a journalist or newspaper reporter that he was friends with, he had to plant an article that was sensational, that was false, and utilized to underline the jury impartiality. So it's things of that nature, you know, and I've been locked down 24 years. I got 63 years for that case, you know, for this case, 63 years for shooting up a police car. I got more time on this case than the young kid or the young man that killed my son received for murder. He grew up in the system for the most part. You know, as a kid growing up in the system, going through what we go through in terms of the criminal justice system, and getting out, trying to do the right things, keeping a job, going to school, going around speaking at different universities and school about the criminal justice system, trying to work with young people in the neighborhood, you know, being politically active in regards to our struggle as a people, you know, and things of that nature. And however, getting into this situation, you know, we as Black men in particular, we never get the benefit of doubt. You know what I'm saying? We go through trauma, we go through crisis, and what have you, and it's criminalized. It's never approached from a mental health, psychological, or psychosocial approach. You know what I'm saying? It's automatically put into a criminalization, a criminal context. And this is what happened when I went to trial, and I went to court on this case. You know, me as an ex-con wasn't looked upon entitled to have the human feeling of having lost a child to violence, you know what I'm saying, to street violence or whatnot. Me as a human being that had gone to prison, who had made a mistake as a juvenile, as a kid, was judged more harshly than, say, some John Doe that didn't have the same record or history as I, that was placed in the same situation. You know what I'm saying? So in terms of trying to get a proper psych evaluation that's non-biased, in terms of trying to get an assessment factoring in the fact that you had been a juvenile that had just served 15 years in prison, that you had been tortured in prison by the state, that you had been through in and out of solitary confinement and whatnot, them type of factors. Those type of factors was not legitimate enough. You know, so for me and for us, in the sense that comes from my type of background, we always have to rise to the occasion and jump over hurdles to be looked upon in terms of humaneness, you know, because we are already fighting against the stereotypes. You know what I'm saying? We are already fighting against the pre-programming and preconditioning of society as well as the state in terms of the perception of our conduct and whatnot. So as people that's traumatized in our community from violence, whether it's from state violence, police violence, street violence, or whatever, you know what I'm saying? We have to go the extra mile to get that recognized and honored. And that's how I feel. And even now, having did 24 years, and again, 13 years of that is in solitary confinement. And for those that don't know what I mean when I say that, I'm saying I'm locked in a cage for 23 hours a day. You understand? 23 hours a day and only allow out for an hour of exercise. You know what I'm saying? And although there may be other people in the area that's in cages as well, you're pretty much isolated. No human contact outside of staff when they bring you out your cell. You know what I'm saying? So I did 13 years of that on this case. You know, and only now beginning to get some type of mental health assessment or mental health treatment. And even with that, I'm having to fight to get the recognition for a psych evaluation or a proper diagnosis and have it recognized and respected just like anybody else. You know, so that's the social reality, that's the reality that we deal with. You know, so, you know.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm just thinking about how prevalent it is actually for the state to use journalists to paint just blatantly false stories in the media. I'm thinking, you know, we were involved in the campaign that eventually freed the Cuban Five, who are 5 Cuban heroes who went to Miami to foil CIA terrorist plots against our country. And the Partnership for Civil Justice Fund was able to uncover concrete evidence that basically like Radio Marti, TV Marti, which broadcast to Cuba, as well as like straight up journalists basically working as a propaganda arm of the U.S. government were writing these, you know, articles in the press. And, you know, it's a similar situation with you, right? You have an oppressed nation, right? The new African nation, an oppressed nation, you know, targeted nation by the U.S., Cuba, and they're using these same tactics against you.
Yeah, I mean, like the state, man, plays by the rules of win at all costs. You know what I'm saying? So when you talk about prosecutorial misconduct, you know what I'm saying? So when you talk about prosecutorial, so like the guy that took point on my case, Pete Villarreal, who has since been demoted, who has since been exposed for some of his shenanigans and his disrespect treatment of women. You know, the man didn't play fair, you know, and I don't expect for him to play fair. And if you feel like you might be at risk of losing a high-profile case, which is what my case was, then you stoop to lower levels in order to further stack the deck in an attempt to prevail and an attempt to win. And that's what he did. He was a Hispanic prosecutor. He had a Hispanic journalist that he was friends with, you understand? And he had this guy come to my trial one day, and then go write a bogus article. You dig what I'm saying? To sway the jury. You know, and that's just one of the things that he did. You know, that's just one aspect of what he done. You know, that's been allowed. And Bernard Carter, who's the head prosecutor for Lake County,
I think they call him King now.
For since 1993, is well aware of my case. He's well aware of some of the internal contradictions within my case. You know, some of the constitutional violations of my case, some of the unethical conduct in my case. And let me drop a bomb on you. These people, the state offered me a 12-year plea during the process of my trial, my case. There was evidence missing in my case. For instance, it was physical evidence missing in my case. My attorney was instructed to go back, and this is a matter of record, to go back and see if you can get 10 years for the case because there was physical evidence that was missing out of the case. And if not, take the 12 years. Instead, my attorney went back and got into an explosive argument with the prosecutor and did not convey to the prosecutor that I was willing to accept that plea.
Damn.
So think about that for a minute. And again, this is a matter of transcribed records. This is a matter of post-eviction PCR hearing records, testimony. And although they tried to play it down later at the hearing, years later, but went on record in a minute, yeah, there was a disagreement, yeah, there was an argument. And it didn't get that communicated. So this is like a Thursday or Friday before a trial, that Monday or what have you. On the day of trial, and I asked her, well, what's up with the plea or whatnot that they offered? And she didn't want to discuss it. She, oh, that's over with. They don't want to know that's over with. Not knowing that she never even communicated my acceptance of the plea to the prosecutor. And then to add the cherry on top, in the middle of my trial, after the state rested, the state came back and offered a 20-year plea. But they wanted me to plead guilty to aggravated battery. You know what I'm saying? And I refused. Why would I plead guilty to aggravated battery when the man was not battered and he was not hurt, seriously injured? You see what I'm saying? And why would you want to offer me 20 years when you just offered me 12 years? And even before that, when there was another prosecutor pressing the case, you understand, they tried to offer me bring me an 8-year plea, which I agreed to plead guilty to. But the officer said there wasn't enough time. So now just process that for a minute. You brought me, and the state of Indiana brought me an 8-year plea, which the victim said was not enough time. Turned around and brought me a 15-year plea, which I turned down. You turned around and came back with a 12-year plea, which I accepted, that didn't get communicated by my attorney. And in the middle of trial, you came back with a 20-year plea, which I did not accept. And in the end, you convicted me of attempt murder and gave me 38 years, and then enhanced that by 25 years because of the fact that I caught a case as a 16-year-old kid, you understand, and 15, 16 years later, caught a low-level Class D felony in another state as a second strike, and you used that to enhance my sentence by 25 years to give me 63 years. On top of the fact that I've been in prison almost 25 years on a non-murder case. Now make that make sense.
Yeah, one can't. I mean, most countries, you don't even do 25 years for a murder case.
And And just for the backstory, here I am that went to prison as a kid, got out of prison. I'm going to Purdue University full time. That's 12 hours. I'm working in the TRIO program, in the Upper Bound program, in the college prep program with kids. I'm going around the country speaking at different universities and colleges, you understand, about criminal justice reform and so forth, and experiencing the supermax and juvenile justice. I'm working in the community with youth, you understand, amongst other things. Had a tragedy happen, fell back on my socialization of somebody that been in prison, amongst also mental health issues, and you throw away the key.
But we know that we can always get that key, wrest it from him, that's why we're here, to unlock that door, break it down, however we got to do it. So what's the prospects like now? What can our listeners do to support you so we can get you home? I want to get you home for your, I believe it's your 60th birthday or your 50th in August.
Yeah, one of the things I want to touch on with that is that I just use my case as an example. There's a lot of cases that's even worse off than mine, where people get railroaded into the system, et cetera. And unfortunately, there's no accountability for the system itself. And that's something that needs to change, especially in Indiana, in terms of criminal justice reform. Indiana has had such a conservative and ultra-conservative lean to it for so long that certain things that's been put in place over the years, over the decades, which have shown not to be a deterrent to crime, you know what I'm saying, that doesn't support prison rehabilitation, et cetera, but has been allowed to remain in place as a form of social control, economical interests, and so forth, right? Without any real checks and balances or any real responsibility or interactive with the community in terms of community impact or community control, and that's something that needs to change. And some of these politicians that's in the legislature and the General Assembly and whatnot, there's been career politicians, that has conflict of interest, that's sitting on boards, that's a part of Aramark, you know what I'm saying? You've been in the Department of Correction for decades, and now you're sitting on the boards of Aramark, companies like Aramark or Geo and so forth and so on, you know what I'm saying? Those are conflict of interest. You have no incentive towards any type of reform, and the people we need the people to get involved. We need people in the community and grassroots organizations and other organizations to organize, to get involved, to put pressure on the General Assembly, to put pressure on the legislature, and to put pressure on these prosecutors, you know what I'm saying, to do something different other than what's being done. And one of the things that we're proposing is we're trying to introduce people to the Second Look campaign. And the Second Look campaign is a movement, a national movement. And you can go online to the Citizen Project and download it and look it up and see what it's talking about. But it's a national movement and program in different states where they're trying to get what they call a Second Look deal passed, where people that's been incarcerated for 10, 15 or plus years, that have engaged in progressive and productive activities since they've been incarcerated. You know what I'm saying? Whether it's through educational programs, vocational trade programs, et cetera. And it has proven by their record that they deserve a second chance, that their cases get a second look in terms of sentencing. Whether it's in the form of sentence modification or what have you. You also have a movement going on across the country that's initiated by prosecutors. It's called the Prosecutor Initiative Resentencing Movement, where prosecutors themselves is initiating a movement and deals to have a second look at convictions and sentences where they make recommendations to resentence and reconsider people's sentences. You know what I'm saying? These are progressive efforts. These are progressive deals. These are things that can be pushed. You know what I'm saying? And it should be bipartisan and it's fair-minded. And statistically it's showing that geriatric prisoners is costing the state tons of money. You know what I'm saying? A large segment of the prison population nowadays are geriatric as well. You know, and why are you holding people that's 50, 60, 70 some years old that statistics have proven the age out of crime are not likely to reoffend, have low recidivism rate? Why are these people being continuously held in prison when you want to hold prison for another 10, 15, 20, 30 years? And they might possibly die in prison. Like, make it make sense.
I mean, I wish I could, but I think it don't. But that's a persuasive argument, right? I feel like Dani, you know, talking to people on the streets, like they're like, yeah, what the hell? What is this guy doing in there? When we talk about your case, they're like, he's been what? You know?
Absolutely. I think also, like, most people on the streets are for you, right? Like when we have conversations with people about like what happened and the circumstances surrounding it, especially when I talk to other parents, I think I would also not be in my right mind if my child had just been murdered. And that's not even taking into consideration the trauma that was happening to you since you
have 1 minute remaining.
Since you were a teenager from the system, right? And I mean, just like listening to your story, of course, I've heard your story before, but I love that you added in today about like, look at all the things that you were doing when you got out, right? Like you were in school full time, 12 hours, what you were doing for the community, what you were doing for yourself. And like you were literally working on reforming yourself already when you got out. And so for them to like throw away the key, like you said, like they're not interested in reform. Right? They are interested in continuing to enslave us, continuing to utilize us as a way to gain profit. But no, I mean, I always love everything you have to say every time I talk to you. So I'm sure listeners are going to enjoy this as well. But the people are for you, Shaka. The people are out here every time we have a conversation. Are like, what can I do? Let me sign. What else do I need to do? How can I donate? So the people are always smarter than what the system thinks.
Thank you for using GTL.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I just want to double down on something too. Like, one, you can go to shakashakur.org and read about my story for the most part. You know, it's different. Or you can Google. I got different podcasts out there, interviews. You know, you can also go to the New African Freedom Campaign on Instagram as well. It talks about my backstory and whatnot. Like I'll be 60 years old in August. You know what I'm saying? Unfortunately, grew up in the system and started in the 80s. And you know, in Indiana, where the system was extremely overtly racist on some levels, amongst other things, and we had to struggle, and we had to fight, and we had to organize just to be treated humanely, or be treated like human beings, be respected as young Black men coming into the system. One thing about me, I'm an open book. I'm secure in who I am and what I represent, and who I am as a Black man, a New African man, a political prisoner, a political activist, an organizer. You understand? Former street soldier, so forth. You know, I own what I do. I own what I've done, but I do not own what I do not do and have not done. And with that being said, like some people tend to try to tell your story for you or create a narrative for you that they want you to abide by. I don't accept that. Never going to accept that. You know, just like some people, just like you got trolls and bots, you know, that try to disrupt, distract, destroy the things that you're trying to accomplish or you're trying to do, or work that you're trying to do, or things that you're trying to achieve. I'm not perfect by a long shot. Don't claim to be perfect. Don't want to be on no pedestal. I'm just a man, a human being that's trying to get back out there to my family and try to do something positive and constructive within the community, give back to the community that I once helped to bring negativity to on some levels back in the day. You know what I'm saying? in a nutshell, as well as reach and help others that's in my situation or similarly situated, and educate people, organize people, let them know that it could be a better day and it could be a better way that we can lay and have in this world, and we ain't got to accept what people tell us we got to accept. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You know.
Exactly.
And that's it in a nutshell.
And I was just,
so I'm asking, like, y'all, we need people to sign that petition. We need people to sign the declaration. I'm asking people to email Bernard Carter asking for a new trial or demanding a new trial or a modification sentence on my case, but more so a new trial. You know, fair is fair. You can't talk about justice. You understand? And you want to pick and choose who gets justice.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You know what I'm saying? You can't talk about you believe in the system, but you don't want to hold the system accountable when it ain't playing by the rules that they supposed to play by.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? You know, and they damn sure they play by the rules in my particular case.
No.
And just because we ain't got money and we don't have prestige and we ain't over here in this, you know, this particular community or whatever, you understand, don't mean that we're not supposed to get the same amount of play and justice and fairness like anybody else. And lastly, on that tip, like I said, nobody got hurt. Police car got shot up. You understand? 25 years in prison on a non-murder.
Against an
And the
inanimate
dude that
object.
killed my son, that murdered my son, got less time than I got. Make it make sense.
Yeah. Only under white supremacy and imperialist capitalism can that make any sense to anybody. And if it does, then you're sick, you know? And I just want to say, Shaka, though, that like the things you're talking about, you know, that you can do out here, you're already doing them in there. And that's why I think you're such an inspiration to all of us at the center and everybody who, you know, who you build with, is that like, you don't that's why it's like across enemy lines, because they can't contain you. They can't confine you. Like you're still building, you know, you're still educating, you're still organizing. And, you know, I always tell people all the time here, I'm like, Shaka's done more for the Liberation Center than like a lot of people in Indianapolis. And he's done it from solitary. He's done it from Virginia, you know, because that's just the type of person you are. So I feel like who you are is beyond like dispute, you know?
Yeah.
Like you can't question your character in terms of who you are, your intentions and everything. We just got to let the people know who you really are against these, you know, sensationalized media narratives. And I think that you know, people are more open to that because they've been through Iraq, they've been through Libya, they've been through Syria, lies. You know, Amadou Diallo. I mean, how many black men, New African communities bombed, you know, domestically. Do you need to go through to, you know, question that? And I think more and more people are. So that's my hope anyways.
Right. Yeah, that's true. And that's what I'm saying. Like, if one thing for sure, like they always say when you go up for parole, even though I don't get to go up for parole, but they always say by the time you try to go back to court and get a time cut, what the serious nature of the crime. Well, one, the serious nature of the crime is never going to change. That's one. Because the crime that already occurred. It's done, you know, it didn't happen. The second thing is that they say, well, you are a threat to the community or society or whatever, right? Well, I got, close to 5,000 signatures on a petition, change.org and so forth, calling for me to have a new trial, calling for my release. You know what I'm saying? I got people all over the country and even in other countries calling for me to have a new trial or calling for my release. You know what I'm saying? I have people within the community that say, if he's released, we'll give him employment. He have a stable adjustment. He have a stable environment, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I have that as community support. You know what I'm saying? On multiple levels. People that's professionals, people that's middle class, people that's working class, the people, you understand, that's calling for my release. You understand? The community who Bernard Carter and Lake County criminal justice system or what I supposed to represent, who they supposed to be working on the behalf of. That man then received hundreds and hundreds of emails on my behalf calling for a second look into my case, calling for some type of relief in my case. You know what I'm saying? And we asking for some kind of response. The people demands a response.
I think one of the other aspects that's why it's so important also to get the word out about what is happening to you, because it's not just happening to you, right? It's happening to so many people around this country in general. But like when we were at the Juneteenth celebration in particular, there were people who I was talking to about you, and they were like, "We have a political prisoner from Indiana." I'm like, I'm not supposed to cuss on here, but we got a lot of political prisoners in this country in general.
A shit ton.
That was the word, yes. But like we have a lot. Like it is not unique. Like this false narrative that the United States doesn't have political prisoners within this country is ridiculous. And for it to be someone who is from Indiana definitely hits home for people. And that's why it shouldn't just because you're from Indiana, but like because you're from here, people want to stand 10 toes down for you. And also just like Derek was saying, the type of person that you are and how you show up for the people, even when you're in isolation, you're behind enemy lines, you keep showing up for the people. And so, yeah, everyone who's listening, like continue to, if you haven't ever written to him, write to him. Like we need to get Shaka out before August.
That's right. We will. All right, Comrade Shaka, any parting words?
No, just that I trust in the people and I trust in the power of the people. I trust in the people. I trust in the power of the people. And with that being said, I trust that the people can bring me home and return to me with my family. And like I said, it's not like the state is doing me any kind of favor. They got almost 25 years out of me. Mm-hmm. I'm almost 60 years old. You telling me that you want me to do another 22 years? Yeah, another 22 years in prison. But yeah, I'm just saying that, it's not like they're doing me a favor or anything. You got 25 years out of me. I'd have paid my debt to society. I'd have paid my dues. You telling me you want me to be in prison for another 22 years, because you're telling me you don't want me to get out of prison until I'm 80-something years old. Where's the justice in that? And I'm out here, I'm organizing programs. I'm organizing all kind of things from the side of prison within the communities to get back to the communities and what have you. I got documentaries that's being shown all over the world about my case. We write books from prison, getting books published from prisons, getting published in different magazines and National Lawyers Guild journals and so forth. I'm an asset to my community and not a liability. And with that being said, I'm asking that be recognized and respected.
Yep. And we at the Indianapolis Liberation Center, we're going to do, and we do everything we can possibly do to make sure that message is heard. It resonates with the people, and we are going to bring you home. We're going to bring you home, and sooner than you think. I mean, we got to set the horizon short, and if we miss it, that's okay. It's better than setting the horizon for 10 years, because if we miss it, that's not okay. And there's no reason you shouldn't be back home tomorrow, especially with this is just an introduction to your case. Forget about all the other nonsense they put you through and all the other nonsense that, wasn't recognized as serious at the time, but now is. So, yeah. I think there's a bright future for the Shaka Shakur Freedom Campaign. And when people say, what about Shaka? What is about Shaka? I always say, well, Shaka is always creating more Shakas, by which I mean, not more like replicas of you, but critical thinkers, doers, actors, reflectors, humble, people, take criticism, give criticism. So that's why they don't want you out here, but that's why we need you out here. The people do. And it is going to be the people. So we got to get together as a people, because when it comes down to it, our power far outnumbers and outmatches, and quantitatively and qualitatively, the power of, Bernard Carter. We're the only people who ever make history. So let's do it.
Yeah, I agree. Most definitely, man. Most definitely. And like I say, it's not just my case ain't the only one. There's a lot of cases, that doesn't have the platform or access to the platforms that I have access to, of people that should be out. Or people that can did their time and they still won't let out. Or people that they didn't took good time from illegally. Like in my case, they took 8.5 years of good time. For people that don't know what that means time that you can already served. The Indiana Department of Correction took 3,100 days from me illegally. You understand? That amounts to 8.5 years that I done already served. That I have to fight to get back. So it's things that goes on in the dark that the community and society don't know because you only get it on the news or you get it through controlled narratives because we often don't get a chance to speak for ourselves. But there's a lot of people in prison. Everybody in prison not necessarily guilty. You know what I'm saying? And then if you believe in the system, if you truly believe in the system, then you should also believe that we're entitled to a fair trial. You understand? We don't always get that.
And if you believe prisons are for rehabilitation, then go to shakashakur.org, look at the wall of accomplishments, and tell me if this man has not taken advantage of every opportunity to improve himself and his life and the lives of those around him and beyond him. So, yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much, Comrade Shakur. It's always an honor to talk to you, Dani.
It's always dope to talk to Shaka, even though me and him go back and forth being on each other's shit lists. But yeah,
bleep that out.
Dakota can bleep it out. Yeah.
I always appreciate y'all, comrades, and I always appreciate the opportunity, man, and the platforms that's being offered. So appreciate the love, the support, the solidarity, always.
All right, comrade. Well,
peace, comrade.
Free the land.
Free the land for sure.
All right. Peace. All right. Well, that's it for another segment of Dispatches Behind the Wire with Naptown People's Radio and our dear comrade Shaka A. Shakur. There will be links in the show notes to all the ways you can support him. We demand you support him. That is not a request. That is a command. And we'll be right back after a short break.
Welcome back on Naptown People's Radio. Hopefully everybody enjoyed that segment of Dispatches from Behind the Wire with Comrade Shaka A. Shakur. I know I say this every time we hear from Shaka, but I always enjoyed talking to Shaka. I always feel inspired every time I talk to Shaka. I also get, I'm a human, so I get a little upset, I'll put it that way, also when I think about how long he's been in there, but it also keeps me going. It motivates me to want to get him out. So hopefully it does the same for listeners as well. All right, so Derek is going to give the Circle City a shout out today. So who do you got for us today, Derek?
Well, I want to give the Circle City shout out to the Hovey Street Church. Now, we've given it to Pastor Janelle Howard before, who, I wouldn't mind giving it to him again. But I'm thinking in particular this Sunday, I was at Hovey Street Church for the Father's Day sermon and event, and Vernon T. Bateman, our good friend, was there. Now, when Vernon was incarcerated, after he released his first children's book, a little girl wrote to him and said, you saved my life. These books are helping me get through my life. And he painted, of course, a series of pictures and made a story that went along with it, and it was on display. But if we just, we can listen to just a little bit of what Pastor Janelle Howard says about Vernon and about how the church will mobilize behind Vernon and stands behind him. And I think, he deserves a shout out because that's what a real leader is. That's what a church leader is. Not just hey, here's a scripture, do what you want with it. See me with your personal problems. He makes personal social problems because he knows that they are social problems. So with that, let's have just a brief listen.
And listen, this brother is at war every day. You understand me? Like, for some of us, we just getting up. Is it still okay? For some of us, we just getting up and we just moving haphazardly. This brother has been fighting for his freedom, even now at this church. In this moment, because he's not bragging.
Right.
This brother was wrongfully incarcerated and is still fighting. And it's a hard fight because for him to be right, some people gotta be wrong. And powerful people do not want to be wrong. And they'd rather destroy him than to say we got it wrong. I apologize. And so what we continue to do is surround him because they know if they bother him, they got to bother us. Y'all ain't talking back to me.
Oh, yeah. Bring him out.
And he tells the story through these beautiful paintings. And he'll be a preacher one day. He's just out here. He like to paint and not talk.
So there you have it. I mean, and one of the reasons why Vernon, one, had to get special permission to go to that church, right? And the other reason why he was there for Father's Day is because his daughter is supposed to be giving birth. She might be giving birth right now. We were recording this on Tuesday, June 23rd, and she might be giving birth. He is not allowed to be there. At first, the parole said, yeah, if you pay us $400 to $500, you can go there. And then they said, but your daughter has to be subjected to some humiliating, series of questions. And we were like, no, you're not. That's abuse, And then the parole was like, all right, we'll give you $100. Like, it's extortion, right?
Absolutely.
And meanwhile, his alleged crime, of which, he's totally innocent, had nothing to do with the child. So there's it's unconstitutional for them to do this. And so he had to have this other platform to do it. And how, you can hear him say it like, hey, if they lock Vernon up now, it's going to be different than last time in 2021, the last time he got locked up. Because we're going to have a whole gang marching at IDOC headquarters saying, like, where's Vernon?
Yeah.
Get him out. And maybe we'll get finally get the news coverage he's deserved for so long, national, international. I mean, if any 60 Minutes, any run of the mill mainstream reporters dug into this, he'd be exonerated immediately. That's really what it's about. And Howard's been with him all the time. I always see him with Vernon, and he's just opening, and he's like us. He's like a Leninist without knowing it, He's like, if we got the same cause, we're struggling to the death, and maybe we'll be on the opposite side one day, but the next day, boom, we're right back at it. And so I just really appreciate it. And the Hovey Street Church, they were all the first 50 signatories on the petition, which you should still go sign. It's still live, and just as Shaka was talking about Bernard Carter, that man is basically king. He's been the district attorney for over 30 years. There's so much dirt on him. He's got so much dirt on everybody else. The feds are crawling all over that place. We've got him lying on paper. We talked about that before. We've got him admitting they sent him away with no evidence at all. So, and here, Pastor Donnell Howard could be using his church to make money and, not troubling the authorities, but he's saying, he's doing the exact opposite, which is what, as far as I know, that's what Jesus was doing. He wasn't just sitting down and taking things for himself. He was, willing to die, to cross the money lenders, right? To start the union. the Carpenters Union. So, yeah, with that, shout out to Pastor Donnell Howard and the Hovey Street congregation.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. I love Pastor Donnell Howard, and those who I've met from the congregation are really about that life, honestly. And so, yeah, I think this is a great shout out. So shout out to the Hovey Street Church of Christ.
All right. So before we wrap it up here, I just want to call your attention to a few events we have happening at the Liberation Center or with the Liberation Center. So first off, we have an event on June 25th, 6 to 8 p.m. at the 1656 Club called Frida Kahlo Inspired Art Workshop. It's $15, but it's an art workshop where each participant receives a feature at the gallery, the Fonseca Du Bois Gallery's upcoming Colors by Frida exhibit. That'll be the third annual time we do that. If that's not your scene, that same day, June 25th, between 6 and 8 p.m., we'll have the second and final meeting of Reading with Comrades, Teaching to Transgress, hosted by Brooks and Amani. And on Saturday, of course, Circle City Sangha mindfulness meetups. Later on that day, between 2 and 3:30 p.m., that is, again, the next day, I'm sorry. Saturday, June 28th, between 2 and 3:30 p.m., we're going to have the first meeting of our next Reading with Comrades series, Revolutionary Education, led by yours truly in collaboration with some other comrades at the center. And then later on that day, between 6 and 8 p.m., we have Emancipatory Emotions, Liberation Yoga, and for the events that come up in the meantime, just keep an eye on IndyLiberationCenter.org. So that does it for the episode of Naptown People's Radio. If you found the show useful, helpful, insightful, aggravating, irritating, get involved, show some love, spread the message, leave us a comment, leave us a review, show some love at support.naptownpeoplesradio.com. And remember, the road ahead is long, but we walk it together. Study with the comrades, build with the people, and always remember, theory without action is paralysis, but action without theory is chaos. Once again, I'm your host, Derek Ford, here with my comrade and co-host,
Dani Abdullah.
Stay disciplined, stay dangerous, and stay in the struggle.
We say all power to the people. That means that we are our own liberators. We don't depend on nobody else. We depend on ourselves. And we take responsibility for ourselves. And therefore, we step up for our organization. Those that have proven by their actions and their practice that they represent for us. All power to the people and peace.
Collaboration. We act as if there's a scarcity of rights. If gay people get rights, women can't have rights. But that's not true. A victory for one is a victory for all. As Dani is saying, And
you talk about people being fearless in the face of whoever there is. They don't care. To the Liberation Center, I would say, this is what we need.